What's up, guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Our first question comes from Mr. J.D. Rice, who asks what returning characters we expect or hope to see in the Cassian show.
This is the first time that people have been, throwing out, oh, we could see this person or that person, and, just about everyone that they mention, I'm like, we could. We really might.
I like that they call it the Cassian show. I hope that that's actually the name of it, and it's got this, cheesy... I don't know, talk show intro. The Cassian show.
It's not, about him on a mission at all. It's he just has on Star Wars guests. He has on Jabba, and he finally gets to touch his belly.
Yeah, it's the Cassian show.
I think K2SO is the obvious choice. It depends on when exactly this takes place, because we see him reprogram K2 in the comics. I kind of wouldn't mind at all if they just adapted that comic and made it part of a bigger story, because, I don't know, those one-off comics that they've done so far haven't really grabbed me, and that was the same. It was just kind of okay, yeah, he met a droid and he reprogrammed, and now they're friends, and, there just wasn't anything to it, so I'd like to see that expanded upon. Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, General Draven, General Merrick.
You just took all the ones that I was going to say for me.
Sorry. I read your mind and I stole them all.
Yeah, I was going to say Mon Mothma or Bail Organa would be awesome to see.
Yeah, just anyone really that has appeared in a Star Wars story so far is in that era. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he ran into some criminal organizations or maybe even teamed up with someone like Crimson Dawn. So it's potentially, sure, Kira, Maul could show up. Maybe even Dryden, again, depending on when this takes place.
Do you think we would see, Krennic or any well-known bad guys?
Potentially.
Or maybe Tarkin?
Potentially. That's every name that throws out. I'm yeah, that's plausible. No one has really been saying, oh, maybe Snoke will show up. That's one where I'm well, probably not. But yeah. I think the only one that I'm doubtful about is Ahsoka. And that's more me just tempering my expectations more than anything. I'd love to see her in live action. Both she and Cassian had the codename Fulcrum. That reminds me of Agent Kallus. Maybe, yeah, although at that point in time, he'd probably still be Imperial. But Ahsoka, I could see it being possible, but I don't know. I think that's where it gets a little dicey, interpreting an animated character in live action, but I'd love to see him try.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see any of the partisans, because, I don't think we would see Saw Gerrera, because I feel like they meet for the first time in Rogue One, sort of, but...
Yeah, it does feel that way. Although, I guess there could be some backstory about, maybe why Cassian knows that he can't just waltz in there without Jyn.
Yeah.
So it does feel like they're meeting for the first time in Rogue One, but I think there's wiggle room if they decided to bring in Forrest Whitaker. So yeah, I think there's room for that too.
Yeah, and there's always room for Warwick Davis to show up.
Oh yeah, I would be shocked almost if he didn't have a role in that.
Yeah.
We were about to stop recording that question, and then Warwick Davis jogged my memory. He could show up as a Cloud Rider. I mean, Enfys Nest and the Cloud Riders
that would be really cool.
Starting to get into the rebellion. So Enfys Nest could show up in the show.
Yeah.
Anyone that had any sort of affiliation with the Rebel Alliance or a Rebel cell at any given time, be it working with them or against them, I think has potential to show up in the Cassian show.
Yeah, at the end of Solo, she even says, this is the beginning of the rebellion. And the explanation of the show so far is this is the
early days of the rebellion. And in the Solo novelization, Enfys Nest meets with Saw Gerrera. So we have this 6 degrees to Kevin Bacon kind of thing going where Enfys knows Saw, who knows Cassian, or yeah, there's these breadcrumbs to all these different characters that could potentially appear.
Give us Enfys Nest.
Yeah.
Jay wants to know if the Sith and Jedi of the Old Republic were more powerful than those of the Skywalker saga.
I don't really think so. I mean, anytime that we start talking about power and the Force in Star Wars, I feel like it starts to get into, I don't know, Dragon Ball Z territory, which is a show that I really like, but I don't think they're the same. people don't have power levels in Star Wars, and I think that your abilities in the Force can kind of come and go depending on how connected you are with it. So I don't really see like, oh, Anakin was like miles ahead of anyone that ever existed. I think that probably he had more potential and certainly achieved it at some times, but I think that he's not the only vessel of the Force.
I mean, definitely in Legends, Luke became crazy powerful. If you want to talk about it like that, like the stories in Legends in the books and stuff, like
he basically becomes a god.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's kind of that Dragon Ball Z kind of storytelling where I don't know, it didn't resonate as much with me, where I like the interpretation of the Force as we're playing with it right now. So I kind of see that there have been vessels of the Force as they've been described by Joe Castanew in the comics. Like, that always happens. So Anakin, Luke, Rey, probably Ben Solo too. They have all been vessels of the Force, kind of chosen in their time. I feel like we keep bringing up Buffy in these Q&As, but
I mean,
like every generation has a chosen one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I see it. So I imagine that in the Old Republic, there were chosen ones. There were people who were incredibly gifted in the Force, like, I don't know, Darth Bane or Revan. If Revan comes back, like, I could see him being a chosen one, so to speak.
Theory Ullman asks how the angry reaction to The Last Jedi has compared to the angry reactions to the prequel trilogy.
It seems similar to me.
I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because social media is so much more prominent. I feel like the angry reaction to The Last Jedi is more intense than it was with the prequels.
Yeah, I mean, it feels louder because it's come to a point where everyone has the ability to easily voice their opinions online. But back in the day in the prequels, it was like kind of the people who were angriest about it. I felt like they were the ones that also had access to online stuff.
Yeah.
So
wasn't there a documentary about fans being angry about the prequels?
The People versus George Lucas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is all just cyclical. Now we'll quote Battlestar Galactica. All of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again. This question reminded me of some of the comments that Simon Pegg made this past week, where he was like, the sequel trilogy is missing George Lucas. And I love Simon Pegg. I love his movies. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End, I think, are all phenomenal. And I'm like, this doesn't...
Fun fact, when we first met, he was dressed up as Shaun of the Dead for Halloween.
That's true. But Simon Pegg, when the prequels came out, he was furious with them. He spent years and years bashing them hard. And like, I don't know. Now he's coming out and he's saying that they had more imagination than the sequel trilogy, which that's a fine opinion to have. But it's more like, okay, I'm glad that he has now found merit in the prequel trilogy, but why couldn't he 20 years ago when The Phantom Menace was coming out? He couldn't like sit down and see, all right, well, at least I enjoyed this. It's just like, no, the prequels are terrible. And now he's like, the prequels weren't so bad, but the sequel trilogy, no good. And it's like, okay, well, in 20 years, he's probably gonna say the sequel trilogy's fine, but this new trilogy that we're in the middle of is garbage. And it's like...
I don't know. Something about the way people reacted to The Last Jedi, specifically with characters like Luke Skywalker, I feel like people took it way more personally.
That I can understand a little more. Like, I can understand saying, ooh, I didn't like what they did with Luke, because I remember being like, ooh, I'm not crazy about the fact that they killed Luke. Like, saying that there are bits and pieces here and there that you wish had been handled differently, there's no problem with that at all. It's just that I feel like every generation, again, you have your original trilogy, your prequel trilogy, your sequel trilogy, and we're going to keep getting like, everyone is going to get their first Star Wars, and then there's also going to be the generation prior that just hates what's new.
Yeah.
And it's just nothing new. Like
Yeah.
the reaction to The Last Jedi, I feel like, is very similar to the reaction to the prequel trilogy.
We'll have to see. I mean, only time will tell because the prequel trilogy got crap for years.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
we'll just have to see.
I just don't see it as being all that different, and everyone just needs to chill out and say, like, you know what, if I didn't like this movie, at least here are some things that I did enjoy about it, and I won't watch it as much, and instead I'll watch, I don't know, Return of the Jedi or the prequels or whatever is your favorite. Like,
Yeah.
just because you didn't like the latest movie doesn't mean that Star Wars is dead forever.
Snickperdoodle wants to know if the light side of the Force affects users in any way like the dark side does. So I guess meaning the dark side with the red eyes and the bad skin condition and maybe the arm problem.
Sure.
Is that all Palpatine or is
I mean, like, yeah, the yellow eyes. It's like the idea is that if you use the dark side heavily, it's gonna make you sick.
Yeah.
So is there anything on the opposite end where the light side gives you anything, I don't know, healing effects? Like, or, I don't know, white eyes? Not that we know of.
Yeah.
I think that the light side is more the way that George Lucas has talked about it. I think he views like the light side as more the natural way of things, and the dark side is part of all of us. But if you give into it over and over and over, it's gonna do bad things for you.
Yeah.
But this made me think of Buffy again. Just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean that it couldn't happen. So like Willow Rosenberg in Buffy, when she goes evil, her hair turns black and stuff. But then in the finale, she taps into some very powerful light magics, and her hair goes white.
But it's it's temporary.
Yeah, but the yellow eyes are temporary too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was like, you know, there could be potentially something down the line where someone just becomes so taken by the light side of the Force that they have some temporary effect where their hair goes white or their eyes go angelic or something. I don't know. But
When I read this question, the first thought that came to my mind was one, I guess, wisdom maybe, because I thought of Yoda and just like how generally wise he is. And I also thought of being charming.
who was your example for that?
I mean, Obi-Wan is always flirting with with Ventress.
I don't think that's a Force power.
And
I think he's just a hunk.
Well, they're not talking about Force powers. It's just like,
so you're saying that if you keep using the light side of the Force, it'll have more effects on your personality?
yeah.
Okay. Instead of like a metaphysical effect, it's like you just generally become a cooler person.
Yeah, like Qui-Gon and Shmi, he had that little,
That one little touch
yeah,
is energetic, electric even.
yeah.
That's his Force lightning. It's just that little Shmi touch.
Christian Morales asks if there's any chance for Captain Phasma to return in episode 9. Well, if you ask me, I'm gonna say yes, because somewhere deep down inside of me, like, I want it to happen. I don't know how it would work. I don't know.
I chose this question specifically because we completely disagree. And we've had that question before too. Like someone's asked, what's something that you both are on the opposite sides of? And this isn't anything major, but it's one where you're like, I think Phasma's going to come back. And I'm like, no way, she's dead. But it's funny that we both kind of feel that way for the same reason.
Mhm.
Like, you want her to come back and be as awesome as she was in the book and in the comic.
Yes.
And I feel like she's wasted her chances in the movies. And like, if she comes back a third time, I'm just going to be like, okay, like, well, this is your third chance. 3 strikes and you're out. You better be dead by the end of this movie, or you better do something amazing to
Yeah.
change my mind.
Originally, I was thinking, oh, she could come back and maybe flip sides and work with the Resistance. But now I'm thinking, like, as far as how the kids who are fans of Star Wars see her, they see her as a female kind of like bad guy role, especially now in Resistance. So I don't think it would make sense for her to flip sides. But I don't know, like, reading her book, she's scrappy. She like can get through a lot of stuff.
I'm with you that in the book and in the comic, she is awesome. And just her movie interpretation never lived up to that. She never quite got to the heights that she did in the book and the comic. And it was so frustrating because I thought that's what they were building towards. And I will say that, like, I think last week or recently we talked about the potential of maybe Finn helping other stormtroopers break out of their brainwashing. I will say that if that were a plot point in episode 9, I think it would be okay for Phasma to be around to have that complete failure of like losing all of her soldiers. That is something I don't dislike, but I do think that she fell into a fiery pit of a ship that had been ripped in half.
She just fell into darkness. We didn't see anything past that.
I think she dead. She dead.
We'll see.
That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where we left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month gets you access to extra Star Wars Explained content. Like this week, we put out our audio commentary for the Clone Wars episode Cat and Mouse. We're starting to do those chronologically like our YouTube series because we were doing it in Netflix order, and that was causing some confusion. So we'll just do that chronologically, too. I also uploaded a comic reactions to Dr. Aphra 26 and Darth Vader 23 that came out this past week. And today, if you're a member of our Jedi Council, later on, we are doing our first Jedi Council meeting. So that's exciting.
Yeah. On to YouTube questions. Tristan Rauchty asks what the most popular sport in the Star Wars universe is. Pod racing?
Yeah.
That's my only thought. I don't know. What else is there?
That'd be my guess. It's the only sport that we have seen multiple times in multiple different media. There is a sport, I can't remember what it was called, in the Servants of the Empire series, where it kind of shows the life of a high schooler for a little bit. And it's football.
Oh.
Like, it's almost exactly football, but like with a couple little Star Wars spins here and there.
Well, Solo gave us a bit of underground droid fighting, but I think that's kind of kept
could be
on the down low.
Yeah, I guess it's a sport for droids. And there are other fighting pits with aliens, but again, that's like not really a sport. That's illegal slavery.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say pod racing is the best bet.
Jedi Spartan wants to know how Palpatine would have fought the Yuuzhan Vong if the Empire had never fallen in Legends.
I kind of liked the idea that that's what all the super weapons were for.
Yeah.
I mean, they were pretty strongly hinting that near the end of the Legends timeline, especially, where Palpatine knew that the Yuuzhan Vong was out there, and so did the Chiss, and they were kind of both preparing for this invasion. So Palpatine's like, I gotta build all these super weapons, but also I'm going to use them on my own empire. And so that was the problem, I think. I don't think that that's something they're building towards at all in the new canon. I think that the Death Star, like, it just stops and starts as a piece of fear-fueled machinery. I don't even know what to call it. Just like, It was there to keep the Empire in line, all of the rebellious planets, and nothing more.
Do you think Palpatine could have in any way somehow talked the Yuuzhan Vong into joining him, or like made some kind of alliance, or been like, hey, we should team up and take care of those blue guys?
No, I don't think so.
They're the real enemy.
The Yuuzhan Vong didn't seem to be interested in anything like that. They were out to kill and cause pain. Like, they are a pain-driven society, so I don't think they had any interest in teaming up with anybody.
I don't know. Palpatine's a good negotiator.
Not that good. I think he saw them as a threat and nothing more. And I think he was right in the Legends universe.
Supreme Leader Smeagol asks how Palpatine would have explained Darth Vader if he wasn't disfigured on Mustafar, but just looked like Anakin. Why did he hide Anakin's identity at all?
I don't really know. I mean, I think that the real reason is because Anakin's identity was hidden in the original trilogy. So it had to be hidden at the end of the prequel trilogy. But if he weren't disfigured, I think it only would have helped Palpatine's claim that the Jedi had turned on him and tried to assassinate him if he had a hero of the Clone Wars that was a Jedi. Like, yeah, they totally tried to kill him. Like,
Right.
he would only reinforce his claim, but I don't know why he didn't just say, this is Anakin. He's messed up and he's in this suit, but it's Anakin. I guess it would be hard to prove that after all the disfiguring.
Yeah. My thought process was, I guess he did a few things over the years to keep Anakin as Darth Vader angry and to keep forcing him into the dark side. I feel like if he had kept him out in the open as Anakin, word may have gotten out and people who knew who Anakin was may have tried to save him.
I think that's actually a solid point. And you made me think of something else where, I mean, Darth Vader is trying to suppress the identity of Anakin. He doesn't think of himself as Anakin, and Palpatine probably wants it that way. He probably sees Darth Vader as stronger when he is Darth Vader and has cut all ties with who Anakin was. In fact, in stories like Thrawn Alliances and in the Darth Vader comic, like, Palpatine is constantly testing Vader. And in Lords of the Sith, too. He's, like, trying to see if there's still Anakin within him. So, yeah, I think that's probably the real answer.
Yeah, he's trying to make this, like, a completely different person, because if any bit of the light side comes back from Anakin, there's a chance that he could turn on him.
Yeah.
And, yeah. Salvo Vet wants to know if we could see Dengar, Bosk, or IG-88 in any of the new live-action shows.
Well, like we said up top, I think that all three of them could potentially show up in the Cassian show.
Why not?
I also think they would fit well in The Mandalorian. Bounty hunters, Mandalorians have a long history of being bounty hunters, so yeah, why not? And I would love to see all three of them return.
I definitely think in The Mandalorian we have potential for seeing one or all of those characters.
Mm-hmm. We actually know that Dengar is kind of on the side of the New Republic at the time, at least in the Aftermath books, or Empire's End specifically. So maybe he could come out to the Outer Rim where the Mandalorian is. And
he was mentioned in Tales from Vandor, which was like a small young reader book that came out after Solo. Just in a couple little spots, Dengar was mentioned. So
he stopped by Fort Yipso.
Yeah.
Which, you know, like, that kind of, to bring me back to Cassian show, it's like anything that they already built sets for, I'm like, I could see them reusing that
would be cool.
for TV shows. Yeah, why not stop by Vandor again?
Yeah.
And yeah, why not see Dengar there? I feel like, though, Bosk and IG-88 are more likely candidates since they're just dudes in suits. Mm-hmm. Dengar, it's like, I don't know, he had a scarred face and the diaper on his head. Like, you could probably make someone look like Dengar.
He was on his head.
I said what I said. He's only on screen for a couple seconds, so it's like, it's not like recasting him is a big deal or anything.
Yeah. Joe the Hobo asks, which Star Wars film has our favorite score?
I think, although I am kind of obsessed with the Solo score right now, I think Empire Strikes Back is my favorite. It's got the Imperial March, and it's got Yoda's theme. It's got that ending suite, Han and the Princess. Like, there are a lot of cues that I find to be incredibly iconic in Star Wars that first appeared in The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I didn't really listen to the scores as much growing up as I did watching the movies. So I'm going to have to say The Force Awakens, because I love Rey's theme and I love the First Order theme / Kylo Ren's theme. I just think it's like the perfect bad guy.
I will say
song.
That the March of the Resistance gets stuck in my head every time I hear it. So there's that. I mean, it's hard to choose between John Williams scores. Like, they're all so good. The prequels have so many iconic scores. Duel of Fates is like top tier Star Wars. Yeah. So
it still like gives me chills every time I watch The Force Awakens, just knowing like how long of a gap of time there was with no Star Wars, and then we get all these new themes in The Force Awakens, and they're all great.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss John Williams. I totally respect his decision to retire after 9. It makes sense, but I'm gonna miss the man.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have for questions today. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put them in the comments below or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel,
And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
as always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.